Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. Tonight is the first occasion we've got to be together to formally recognise our 75th Jubilee year. So it's pretty important. And 75 years in the club history, it's a great milestone. I think you'll all agree. So thank you for making the effort to come out, and I don't think you'll be disappointed in giving up your time for the next hour and a half or so. It's interesting that, it's actually 75 years to the day that our founding fathers actually incorporated this golf club and had the temerity, if you like, to secure this wonderful piece of land, which ended up in being a wonderful golf course, which of course we're all so proud of. I'd like to propose a very quick toast to our founding fathers in appreciation of what they have left us with. Here's to our founding fathers.
Cheers.
I don't think that our speaker requires any introduction, but I will give him a little one. I've been very fortunate to have known Leo since about the time he joined this golf club, which I think from memory was 2006. And I can remember walking in the evenings practicing, and Leo was out there late at night, obviously checking the quality of the green stuff. And I can remember distinctly one time in that very first year, I was hitting 5 or 6 balls up to 13th, and he was on a tractor, I think, looking at the surface of the green or something like that anyway, and he sort of looked at me and, what are you doing hitting those golf balls? I had no idea that you were meant to do that, of course. He did remind me of that quite a few years later, I think, when I was men's captain, and was laying the law down in terms of what people should or should not do on the golf course, practicing. But Leo is, as you know, is extraordinarily passionate about this golf club, the golf course, and its history. And he calls himself an amateur historian. And I've had the pleasure of hearing Leo speak formally on 4 or 5 occasions now, mainly through the Alec Russell Society gatherings, which are held, as some of you will know, every 2 years, most of which have been in Australia. And Leo is revered as a speaker. They listen to him intently in terms of what he's done with this golf course. So, in my view, there is no better person to give us this little piece of history tonight and share with us what he's gleaned. And when I say gleaned, Leo, I know, has sat down many times with some of our older members, not long before they've actually passed away, making sure that he's captured, some of their memories of the formation of this golf club and even back to the time of the work that Alec Russell did and how he sort of had members play balls into holes and that sort of stuff. You'll probably hear about that. But you're in for a treat, and without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Leo Barber, our General Manager and Superintendent.
Fantastic build-up, Glenn. Thank you very much. I wasn't too sure how many people will actually turn up tonight, so I've stacked the front row there with some of my family members just in case. So thanks for proving me wrong, but wonderful to have my mother and father along tonight, and my wife and one of my brothers. So welcome. We're also filming this tonight as well for the people that couldn't be with us here tonight, so that we can share this at some later stage on YouTube or some other kind of electronic form of media. So and I guess that's the thing with history. It's only as good as long as it's kind of captured and remembered and passed down. And as Glenn said, I am if I put a disclaimer on, I am just an amateur historian or someone that is very interested in history. And I don't have many regrets in life, but I look back and I kind of think, why did I not do history at school? Because it's something I've got quite fond of in later years. And I'm looking straight at my brother there who did history at school and talked me out of it because he said there was a hell of a lot of writing. So yeah, just so happens I got interested in writing now as well. So anyway, there you go. So hey, look, I will disclaim, put a little disclaimer in. This is as Glenn said, this is just things that I've gleaned over my time here at the club. I am very passionate about all things Paraparaumu Beach. I have been very fortunate, to have spent the last 18 years of my life here and to have met so many wonderful members and members that have stretched back to some of the things I'm talking about tonight, those foundation years. that have been very gracious in coming back to the club and sharing things. And it's in those moments that I guess you appreciate, how much this club has meant to so many people over so many years. And it's not just the membership that I'm, looking, or representatives of the membership that I'm looking at now. It's members that, as we've discussed, stretch right back to that day in 1949 across the road here, where they put the things in place to have the first general meeting and to form the club. So, look, but this is, these are my memories of the memories that are shared with me, and there will be from time to time, and there's a hell of a lot of factual stuff that is indisputable, and there's other stuff where I'll place, an interpretation of a member, and I appreciate that might differ from your interpretation, and I look forward to discussing the differences with you after this show. So across the road at 1949, this is where the club did kick off with the first general meeting. However, golf actually started on this site 20 years previously. Right back in 1929, when an enthusiastic group of locals, they secured a lease from the McLean brothers, obviously McLean Street named after them, who farmed this area. And pretty soon there was a 9-hole golf course, or the 9 holes being played on the site. And I'm not sure how many people have had a chance, and I will reference the alcove as we move through the presentation. But I had this wonderful little kind of overlay done up a number of years ago, and it shows the various iterations of the golf course. And whilst largely golf has been played down the same corridors that we're playing down today, it's either been in a different routing or a different order. So in 1929, when things kicked off, and it's it's as big as I could get it here, but they actually played, the first 9 holes was actually played right around the perimeter of the golf club. So the 10th hole, as we know it, was the first hole, the 11th hole, the second hole, and so forth. And there was some variations as we went round. There was some holes that didn't exist, and some holes that are a little bit different than we know today. But effectively, it was played around the outside of the golf course. This original 9 holes was designed by a man by the name of Bert Stratmore. He was a Wellington professional, and like, I guess, a lot of professionals in those early years, they'd made their way out from the UK and Scotland and Ireland to share, well, probably to find a better lifestyle as well, but to share their love of the game and to take the game, into the colonies and the far reaches of the world. So Bert was no different. He learned his golf in Scotland. He came to New Zealand. And again, in those days, they were the jack of all trades. They were the keepers of the green. So he was a club maker. He came out along with his brother, and he taught the game. And he was a professional at Miramar and the Manor Park golf clubs before being asked to design the rudimentary 9 holes out here, along with the greenkeeper at the time, Jack Hunt. So like I say, often they played down the same corridors, but this is indisputable here. This was the 2nd hole, but as we know it now, the 11th green. So you can see it in that punch bowl as we know it today. So this is a very, very early photograph of the course. Then the 1930s came along, and as you will know, the Depression started to hit quite hard, and the McLean brothers looked at selling the land bordering the golf course and the sea. We know it today as the Golden Triangle, where the privileged few get to live. So yes, they put that on the market, and it attracted the interest of a consortium of Wellington businessmen: George Nathan, Stronach Patterson, Doug White, Jack Francis, and H.R. Chalmers. And there's some of the names that we've obviously got to know over the years, and some of their legacy has been left behind on street names around the area as well. So they purchased the block, and then they set about subdividing the land, and they also at the same time extended the golf course to 18 holes by 1937. And this was done by Jay Watt, and I understand he was the professional out of the Hiratonga Golf Club. A number of prominent, and remembering that, say, Paraparaumu in those days of challenging travel was a long trip out of Wellington, and a lot of Wellington people would have had beach homes and holiday homes out here. So this was a great opportunity for a number of prominent families to purchase sections and develop holiday homes out here on the coast. And interesting, I've got an advert, I'm not sure, it might have been on the back of this picture here, but it promotes the area as having a safe beach, good boating and fishing, and one of the few resorts with its own water supply and power for all the modern conveniences. Jack Hunt, as I said, was the original greenkeeper. He maintained the links and his wife collected the green fees. It was very much a public golf course at that time with just a handful of members. Jack Hunt had a falling out with George Nathan and left, and he was replaced by a gentleman called Rod Marsh. The course was grazed by the Hadfields during the World War, and the game continued, albeit in a rudimentary fashion with sheep on the fairways and fences surrounding the greens. George Nathan and Chalmers suggested better money could be made by subdividing this links. However, Stronach Patterson, Douglas White and Jack Francis had other ideas, and they negotiated to buy the land off the other two in 1948 for £10,000. And 33 people attended a meeting in the picture house at Paraparaumu Beach, and I understand that that's the building where Tommy's Real Estate and the Beach Bakery is now, and if you look at it in that context, you will see Picture Theatre straight away. So they met over there. So they purchased it for £10,000, but they needed £15,000 for the initial setup and I guess to purchase machinery, employ staff and take that to the next level to set it up as a proper club. And they achieved this through debentures. And then we come to that day that we're reflecting on today, February 12, 1949, and 75 people met at the tea rooms at the beach for the first general meeting and to transact the business, to make a formal application for incorporation of the Paraparaumu Beach Golf Club. And again, if you can see, so it was called the Majestic Hotel in the time. It's now called Barnacle. Well, it was called Barnacles for many, many years, and now I think there's a like a recruitment company. Some of the guys that have been girls that have been working on the roading system, but that's Barnacles right there, or what was the Majestic Hotel in the day. And I understand the building just above it, that was the tea rooms, and that was where the 75 members got together and formally had their first general meeting. Stronach Patterson was appointed the first president, Doug White the vice, and Alex Patterson was the secretary. So with the land purchased and the administrative structure in place, it was decided to redesign the original layout to a first-class course capable of hosting national and international events. And this was probably the best thing. They kind of kicked things off with. They approached Sloane Morpeth. Now, Sloane in his own right has a very interesting history. He was born in Waihi. He became general manager of the Titirangi Golf Club, one of our reciprocals at a very young age. He was an accomplished amateur golfer. Like I say, he was secretary of Titirangi, but in his 20s he actually moved across to Australia, which wouldn't have been that common, I guess, in that day. And he was appointed the manager of the Commonwealth Golf Club. During the same period, he was secretary manager of the Australian Golf Union, so Golf Australia as they would know it today, the equivalent of Golf New Zealand. And even then he took on more business in the war years, between 1940 and 1945. He was secretary manager of the Yarra Yarra Golf Club as well, which is a Alec Russell course and one of our reciprocals. So he was obviously quite a worldly person. He was quite well connected. He was actually doing course design at this time as well. He's done the Portsea Golf Club, the Peninsula. He made changes at Commonwealth. And his last swan song was actually at Reti Sands down in Invercargill there. And I'll talk about it later. He actually designed the new 14th hole that replaced our old 14th hole. So he knew a fair bit about design, and I understand Douglas White approached him to actually do the full design for our place, but he suggested and put the club in touch with Alec Russell, who was designer of several courses in Australia already. He was a 1924 Australian Open champion, an incredible golfer himself. He's a member of Royal Melbourne Golf Club, and he was very instrumental in the creation of the new Royal Melbourne Golf Club at Black Rock when they had shifted. He designed the West Course with Alistair Mackenzie, and I'll explain a little bit about that, the significance of that soon. And then he did the East Course at Royal Melbourne on his own outright. He was also responsible for Yarra Yarra up there in the top right corner, and Lake Karrinyup over in the Western Australia. And since then, and this, through the Alec Russell Society, Alec Russell himself was so much more than just these four courses. He consulted on a number of existing courses, and certainly did a lot more than what's been documented as his originals. So in 1926, Alistair Mackenzie, now Alistair Mackenzie is regarded as the doyen of golf course architecture. He's got the most top courses in the top 100. An absolute student of the game in the early 1900s, came out of there. He's responsible for Royal Melbourne, Cypress Point, Augusta National, that's to name three of them, the Meadow Club, Elwoodley in the UK. So a number of them are very, and it was almost as D.O. White was doing to Alec Russell 50 odd years later. Royal Melbourne reached out to Alistair Mackenzie back in the mid-1920s, and Alistair Mackenzie went on what is now regarded as a very famous world tour in 1926, which took him firstly to Australia, where he not only designed Royal Melbourne West, he also went on and he had hands in Kingston Heath and Victoria, a lot of those very famous courses that we love and know today on the Melbourne Sandbelt. But what he only spent very short periods of time on this trip. But I mean, he's credited with so much. But some of these places he was only on site for an hour, well maybe for an hour. Sometimes only for a day. He was very good at doing a routing. But what he was very, very good at was associating himself with someone local. And in the case of Australia, this was Alec Russell. So he was very connected with Alistair Mackenzie, and he would have taken a lot of information down from Alistair Mackenzie, so that when Mackenzie moved on, Russell was there and the greenkeepers of the day to actually implement some of these designs. And I sometimes think that the likes of Mackenzie and in later years, Russell over with us gets a hell of a lot of credit when they really spent very little time on site, and they left behind people to build these courses in their absence. Nonetheless, very smart at doing that, and this is a reference from Dr. Alistair Mackenzie, and I just thought it's on the wall over there in the alcove as well. But I thought this was worth pointing out when he refers to Alec Russell. He says his ideas on golf course architecture conform as nearly as possible to my own, and he is far more capable of carrying out these ideas than anyone I have yet met in Australia. All right, and I just make that point just to kind of reiterate the pedigree that Alec Russell is and was. That's Ian Ewan. I'll discuss a little bit about Ian Ewan now. Fantastic gentleman. I got to spend a fair bit of time with Ian in my early years here at the club, and he lived well into his 90s. He was active as a golfer well into his 90s, broke his age often. He was a serious golfer. I actually remember looking outside my window one day in a bit of southerly, and Ian Ewan, who would have been 94 at the time, was out there practicing his chipping. So that was the kind of quality of gentleman this guy was. And I also got to drive the course with Ian Ewan, and the significance of that is that Ian Ewan worked very closely with Alec Russell when Alec Russell came out. So Alec Russell each day charged with a topography map. I think he had a 5-iron, and he'd often take some of the promising juniors at the time, and one of these was Ian Ewan, who was, like I said, a good golfer. And he would go out there and he'd get Ian Ewan and Gus Horn to hit balls to certain areas where he was planning landing areas, or to green sites and things like that. So driving the course with Ian Ewan on that occasion, Ian would stop at a site, and I don't know how this works, but Ian Ewan probably couldn't remember what happened yesterday, but he could remember distinctly walking around with Alec Russell back in the day, and he'd say, hey, this area here is where Alec had me hitting balls to, and it's now in 6-inch rough. Like, you got to sort it out, Leo. You got to take the fairway further out to the right and things like that. So he was really particular about that stuff, and I've seen there's letters, like pages of letters from Ian Ewan, very passionate, and at various stages disappointed if he saw something that was going against something that he knew Alec Russell wouldn't be keen and wasn't part of the design intent. So I just sort of pop a photo in there with Ian Ewan. He's very pivotal. Like I say, the course was largely played, and just you just have to look at the topography and the dunes to know that there's only certain ways you could probably play golf on this property. So it was largely played up and down the same corridors that we do today. But so what did he do? Okay, so I'll run through, and not in order, but just some of the holes that differed. And there was an article in the 1950 Levin Chronicle which said that Alec Russell stated when he first walked on site that, hey, this is a world-class golf course and do nothing, and it's still going to be one of the best courses in the area. So there was obviously something pretty special here to start with. But I think some of the things that Russell went on to do kind of really stamped that level of genius on our golf course. So, hey, look, this is. So I've got two yellow marks here. So the one on the extreme left, that's the 13th green. All right. So the 13th green never played up to the plateau like we know it today. It played down shorter. All right. So it extended the 13th. The arrow going down the left, that's the 15th hole as we know it today. And that green we're looking at, and I go there often, is that little wee turf nursery that's sitting in between 13 and 15. That was actually a golf hole. That was what would have become the 15th, but during the routing, that was the front nine. So that would have been the 7th hole back in the day. All right. So that's that little bit of relief when you spray the ball right and you come over the dune and you're thankful that you're on 10 millimetres of grass and not 2 foot. This is the 17th hole. So the arrow on the left. Okay. So let's slowly step through this. So the 10th hole was the first. The 11th hole. They haven't changed too much. The 10th hole, actually, you put the tee back over the bridge. I understand it was kind of down just beside the fence there. Put the tee over the bridge. 11 looks largely unchanged. And then 12, which would have been the third, or the third hole then, was this arrow on the left. And if you wander left of the 18th tees, you'll see a flat piece. It's covered in 2 foot of rough now. But that was the tee for the third. And the third played down what we know as the lower fairway on 17. All right, so picture, well, it's right in front of you. Picture it, so it goes down there. Now, flicking around, coming back the other way, the hole to the 17th, or what would have been the 8th hole in those days, it played just simply down the ridge. Now, what Alec Russell did is he took that and he turned it into one hole, the 17th, which, as we know now, is considered one of the top 100 golf holes in the world, if not, less than that, and certainly one of the top handful in Australasia. So it just shows, again, he took 2 holes that were probably okay holes, turned them into one hole, and 17 is one of the most brilliant examples of strategic design. And that was very much Alec Russell's kind of school of architecture, was that strategic, not to kind of penalise and trip you up, but to give you options depending on your ability and the wind. And in order to do that, I'll discuss it down the track, but you need width on the fairways, and you need to be able to hit it to those areas where Ian Ewan said that Alec Russell wanted us to go. You need to create more short grass and things like that. So that's the strategic school of design. This is a really, really old photo. This is the 4th hole. All right, so at that stage when Alec Russell first got here, there was no bunkers on the course. So he set about putting some designing some bunkers as well. So this is the 4th, and as we know, now, well, that this is an in-between photo because there's still a number of trees there at the back. But he bunkered up the right-hand side, and he put that little bunker on the left, and kicked the green on an angle, and all of a sudden it went from a straight par 4 to a very strategic par 4, where again you want to head out to the left-hand side of the fairway in order to give yourself a look into the green and a back right pin. All right, so just little subtleties like that where he made just little adjustments. This is the 8th hole. All right, that's the best photo I could get of the 8th. So the 8th hole, as we know now, incredibly strategic, and you've got the, what do they call it, the line of charm, which heads out to the Allen's house, out to the chimney, and then the line of instinct, which goes straight at the green, and before you know it, you're in trouble because you're on the right-hand side, and you've got a little bunker in front of you, and you've got the smallest green on the course. So again, he created that, but when he first got to it, that hole was, it was the 8th hole on this circuitous route that was there. And it played straight down the right-hand side all the way. And if you go beyond where the green is now, you will see a little wee berm that just sits around the back, and I've pointed this out to some of the neighbours there at various times. So that was just probably a very bland hole turned into one of the better strategic holes. He left us this wonderful plan on the wall over there, which we've recently had scanned to try and protect it because it was starting to degrade, even though it had very museum glass in it. So this was a wonderful treasure, and like all all the articles that we've framed over there. Yeah, I was interested. It was Alan Mackay, I think it was, when they were cleaning out the clubhouse here at one stage. He rescued them out of a dumpster and thought they had kind of some significance. And as you go around to some of these Alec Russell courses that we do with the society events, not every one of those courses actually has one of these plans, and they're just wonderfully simple. But that's a great routing which he left behind. Now, what wasn't built? So there was a few things that are on that plan that would never came to fruition. The 12th hole is one of them. You can see here he's got the dots, the alternate route, which we play it today, straight down the fence line. But he actually had the hole playing back into that lower fairway over on 17 and coming back across the dune to the other way. And I think it was possibly a safety concern that he probably went away from that idea. And just even walking the course with some architects today, if he had machinery like we've got today, I mean, Scott McPherson looks at that dune and says, oh yeah, we just pick that up over here and pop it over there like it was half a day with a digger. So it may have been totally different, but I think he went away from that because of the safety concerns over on 17. The 5th hole, the tee was supposed to go further left up on just above where the toilet is today. Really interesting to have a walk up there and see what that looks like. And I'll talk about it when I get to the 5th, but the further left you went on that hole, the more that hole really presented itself. Then there was some other things. There was a ridge lowered. What have I got in there? See the alternate tee. So he's got an alternate tee on the 4th hole. So he had a bunker front left into 16. And I think if you read his notes over there on the wall, he changed his opinion on bunkers after kind of coming back and perhaps not appreciating what such an exposed kind of windy site we were. And they were one of the things he did mention. He would kind of do things a little differently. So there was a number of bunkers. Left-hand side of 15, he had bunkered out with a couple of them there as well that were never built. That could have been a resource issue as well. And then he left these wonderful little templates, these green templates. Really simple when you think of today, designers with CAD designs and all sorts of electronic and schematics and things like that. And if you walk into the Titirangi Club room, you'll see this exact pad of paper. So whether this was just something that Mackenzie brought out in 26 and 20 or 30 years later, these architects have still got pads of this stuff lying around. But very, very simple perspectives. But these are the things that he left behind for Jack Hunt, the greenkeeper of the day, to build. So not massive notes. That was the 14th as well. So that was it. He spent 5 weeks staying with Stronach Patterson across just off Golf Road there on the back section. House is still there today. It's got a wonderful, and we're just talking to someone earlier that Mrs. Patterson still lives in there, aged 99. So lovely grand place, very grand back in the day. He stayed there for 5 weeks, came out here every day, and at the end of it, all he asked for was a silver hip flask that it's written that he admired Stronach Patterson had one of them, and that was his payment for designing Paraparaumu Beach Golf Club. So there you go, very generous. So he jumped back on the Wangaratta and went back to Australia, and he left Doug White there on the left, and that's Jack Hunt on the right, and they're standing on the 13th green that was extended and rebuilt. His instructions were, I understand, was to make natural-looking earthworks. So he was very big into making things look like they belong there. So this is in the early 50s. So I'll just finish off that course construction bit. So reading some newspaper articles, some of the minutes from around that period, 1952-53, what we can deduce is that the changes were made over a extended period of time, 49 to about 53, and pretty much as resources allowed. Labour was very tight during that time. Probably money was fairly tight as well. And they did it in a manner that golf could continue to play. So they were extending things and golf was still going on in the background. So possibly about 4 years. So there was no kind of formal opening or anything like that from what I can tell. Yeah, so this is a picture from 1953. And one thing just that's worth mentioning in here is look at all that beautiful land out to the left there, which is now Callender Terrace, Eatwell Avenue, Grey Avenue. The club had the opportunity to purchase 120 acres of that. And they offered $190, it might be £190 an acre. The vendor wanted 200, so they missed out on that. That was the first time they missed out on land. And when you kind of think now how landlocked we are, you kind of look back, and I think even Miramar Golf Club had sights of coming out onto that bit of land, or they would have done something with another, probably Wellington Golf Club. In 1960, they missed out on purchasing the 5 sections down on Martin Road. What was that? That was $5,000 down there, and so that's where Jon Boren lives, and left-hand side of the 14th. And that would have saved them actually moving the 14th green in later years. And then in 1970, 10 acres of that 120 came up, which again they missed, and that would have protected the 7th boundary, and that became Calendar Terrace. So there was a couple of opportunities through the years where we might have extended our holding, but didn't. And then Alec Russell returned in 1952. All his notes are over there on the wall again, and inspected the course. And I'll just take a few lines out of his notes over there. And he didn't write a lot, so it's it's always quite exciting when you discover an architect that has left some writings behind. He says, "It is with my greatest pleasure, therefore, that I found my ideas and suggestions had been translated exactly as I had envisaged them. Any mistakes in the layout or construction are all mine, but I don't believe there are many." So that was, really kind of kudos to the people he left behind to build it. He then went on, and just as I mentioned before, he did talk about he would have done the bunkering slightly different, slightly smaller, and grass-faced to stop some of the erosion. So whilst I don't think there was a formal opening, there was certainly an exhibition match that was played in those early years, 1951. Here goes a picture here of Philip Scrutton. He was a top British amateur. He was a good friend of Peter Thompson, who, and you'll find out later, became a very good friend of Paraparaumu Beach. George Roberts, he was a New Zealand amateur champion and later chairman of New Zealand Golf Council. John Hornibrook, who was also a member here. He was a New Zealand Open champion in 1937 and 1939, and a New Zealand amateur champion, 35, 36 and 39. And there goes Peter Thompson along with them. And not playing on the right-hand side there is Stronach Patterson and D.O. White. Later that year, Doug White underwrote an invitational event, which would later go on to become the Caltex, and I'll talk about that soon. But he underwrote that. It was an invitation for the top amateurs of the day, and that was aimed to provide a profile for the club and to foster amateur golf, which it seems like Doug White was fairly big and fairly keen into, and to raise the general level of skill by providing such competition. And like I say, this was a forerunner to the Caltex tournaments that were not only fantastic for raising the profile of Paraparaumu Beach Golf Club, but was incredibly pivotal in growing the game of golf here in New Zealand. Thinking coming out of the war years in the 40s and 50s and 60s, where golf really boomed. And I'm sure you have as well, but you meet a lot of people with a lot of great memories of coming here as kids, watching these great players. And I just lament the fact today that the great players with probably more resources, more money, more opportunity, don't travel like those players did back in the day. But you got the opportunity to come out and you got to see your heroes, your Cal Nagels and Gary Player and Peter Thompson and the like, Bob Charles. So it really helped to profile the club and also grow the love of the sport here in New Zealand. So very important. That was the 1957 Caltex. And another thing, I guess those Caltex days, they really engendered club spirit and that volunteerism that we talk about, and we are fortunate to enjoy these days as well. But all the members got involved. All the members were volunteers. A lot of the members were volunteers. I don't know if this is a real stretch, like Augusta-like, because this was a very this was the first truly professional event in New Zealand. So this was the brainchild of a small number of people. It was run solely by the golf club. The money was put up and the organisation through the golf club. I understand in reading some of the books that the scoring systems were really innovative. And until that stage, you didn't have necessarily scoreboards and updates and things like that. And I'm trying to rack my brain. I haven't met the gentleman as well, but I think he worked. It's in the history book. He was, I think he might have worked for the post office, and he got a whole lot of cable, might have fallen off the back of a truck, and he had stretched cable out across the course, and they were, sending messages back from the 13th tee for updating the scores. So, just like Augusta with their early days of IBM and scoring and television and things like that. I mean, I think there was some very innovative stuff that happened here back in those early years with the Caltex. And these are the gentlemen that really kind of kicked it off. The gentleman right in the front above the very large bottle of whiskey, which I understand was quite a big thing back in those days here. That is Horace Hanson. He was the managing director of Caltex. I think he also served on the New Zealand Golf Council at one stage, but he was a big fan of golf. And while Horace Hanson was in charge of Caltex, the Caltex was played out here at Paraparaumu Beach. He's flanked either side there by Cal Nagel and Peter Thompson, and I'll speak a little bit about those two later on, but became very good friends of Paraparaumu Beach. And meeting Andrew Thompson, who is coming out here in a few weeks' time, that's Peter Thompson's son, to participate in our invitational. I met him a couple of years ago at Royal Melbourne, and he spoke fondly of Paraparaumu Beach. He remembered how his father spoke very fondly of Paraparaumu Beach, and he said this was his absolute happy place. He used to come here at the end of the season, and this was kind of like his guys' trip, and he would stay. All the members would bill it. So remember, a lot of members and prominent families had bought up down the left-hand side of the 10th and the 11th, and they would bill it out. They would stay with them. They have a great time. It was a relaxed environment, great hospitality, and he said his father absolutely loved it. And he took Andrew, I think, on one of those trips, and he only took his wife on one of those trips as well. So, and that's of course Doug White over in the far side there.
Jack Sullivan on the left.
That is Jack Sullivan. Okay, there you go. Thank you. And Jack Sullivan is?
He was the head of one of the oil companies, Caltex.
Yeah, right.
But he was also chairman of New Zealand Rugby Union.
Right. Okay. There you go. Right. Some pretty powerful people. So through the likes of Cal Nagel and Peter Thompson, they would come out themselves, but then they'd also invite some of their friends on tours. It was very collegial back in the day, and everyone with friends and kind of competing together in a friendly, competitive environment. So Gary Player came out here in 1958, and I think there was also a desire for those players to come out because they'd be on, Slazenger contracts or some, simple contracts and things to push golf clubs and stuff into the region. I mean, during that time, not to the Caltex, but, New Zealand in general, there was a lot of good players coming through, like your Arnold Palmers and the likes. So Gary Player came through, and what was I going to say about Gary Player? So T.P. McLean reported. He was a reporter, wasn't he, for the Evening Post or the Herald? There you go. He remembers Gary Player coming down into a biting southerly. He finished 3-3. So that's birdie, eagle, 17, 18. Walks into the locker room, removes his shoe, smashes it into the floor, and says, "This is a great golf club, a great, great golf club." So a wonderful quote there from Gary Player. And ironically, I put that photo on social media a couple of years ago, and it might have been Twitter or something like that, and the Gary Player Foundation direct messaged me, and they've got a collection of all his images and things like that, and they were very interested on where this image was taken and asked me to kind of send it to them. I've since sent, Edith, I'll have to talk to you at some stage, because I sent that one across to a friend in Dubai where Gary Player was going to be there, and he has written a very nice message on this photo and sent it back to us. Bob Charles won five Caltexes, I think 4 outright, and he shared one with Peter Thompson. He's here with Doug White and Eulalie White. And Sir Bob, when we hosted him out here late last year, it's funny with memories, but he couldn't remember that he'd won here on 6 occasions, and he said that would probably be his most winningest venue, Paraparaumu Beach. I think it was Peter Thompson, so he won on 5 occasions as well. He won on 5 occasions as well, shared it I think twice, once with Nagel and once with Charles. And these are these caricatures. So we had, from what I understand, a very talented cartoonist in the club, Ross Maben. Lived over in Gulf Road or somewhere over in that area there. Anyway, we've had those restored up the back there, but he was very clever at capturing the person and then putting kind of a whole bunch of messages around, which I guess if you don't know, you'd kind of wash over you. But there goes Cal Nagel at the top, and in his golf bag he's got a whole lot of tournaments that he's just won, stuffed into the bag, and then there goes the fish that got away, and that's the American Open, which was the US Open. He was leading, I think, with a couple of holes to play, and that one got away from him. Then down the bottom there, you got Peter Thompson, and you got in the background, you got his 5 British Opens, and at that stage he had 8 New Zealand Opens. He ended up with 9 New Zealand Opens. But also in this photo is that lawnmower, or that greens mower, which has become really significant. I've got it away at the moment, getting it restored, but that was the first Toro mower imported into New Zealand back in the 60s. Put that into context. I mean, these guys weren't professional golfers like we know today. They're not on. They weren't on massive contracts. They would have had good lifestyles, of course. But him and Cal Nagel got together and donated that mower to the club. That mower today, $25,000. So it wouldn't have been an insignificant gesture back in those days as well. So rescued it out of the back of the greenkeeper's shed, and I'm getting it restored as we speak. And hopefully at some stage I'd love to present it in the clubhouse. But it wasn't just for professionals. The Caltex was also for amateurs as well. And think back to the aims of Doug White when he kicked it all off. He wanted to increase the skill level and promote amateur golf. So this is John Durry. I think I'll talk in more in detail with John Durry later on. But so this was John Durry, and so for the professionals they got prize money, and for the amateurs they got a tray, a silver tray tea set. And so you'll see in those photos that I think we've got downstairs now, the amateurs, the top amateur would always get the silver tea set. And this is Jack Lacey and his wife. Charles, of course, would have gone on to play with you, Alan, in our teams of the 70s and 80s, the interclub teams. Jack Lacey, incredible amateur golfer in his own right, and he was a leading amateur in one of the Caltexes. And Charles, his son, actually reached out to me when Jack was on his deathbed and asked for a copy of that photo. I went into the boardroom and scanned it and sent it off, and wonderful memories for his father in his last days. So that was the Caltexes. So they went for 18 years, right up until 1972, until Horace Hansen moved on and Caltex moved its focus from golf into other areas. But wonderful memories. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the briefs of not only the founding members of this club, but the brief they gave to Alec Russell was to make a course capable of hosting the country's top events. And of course, we hosted 12 New Zealand Opens, over the 75 years, starting in 1959 with Peter Thompson's victory. Essentially, it wasn't without drama though, and I've since read some articles on it where coming down the last, Cal Nagel needed a birdie to force a playoff, and he failed to reach the green in 3. Thompson would have had one hand on the trophy, and Cal Nagel chipped in the hole for the birdie, and they went to a playoff the next day. And when Cal Nagel passed away, I reached out to his family and to acknowledge his passing and the special association with our golf club, and his daughter ended up sending a very nice handwritten letter back to me, and she remembers her father coming home from that trip saying that he must have really upset Peter Thompson, because when he chipped in, because Peter then turned around the next day and pasted him by about 7 shots on a playoff. So she remembered that as a little girl, her father coming home and saying how displeased that Thompson was. 1966 was Bob Charles. This was actually the occasion of the 50th New Zealand Open, so quite a significant event, 50 years. We hosted it here, and Bob Charles won by a record 13 shots over the English professional Guy Wolstenholme, and at that stage that was a record winning margin. As we know, Sir Bob is an incredibly good putter, and evidently his putter got very hot in the 3rd round where he shot a 65, so really kind of set himself up there for a comfortable final round. 1972, it was Billy Dunk's turn, and interesting with this is that he actually won twice in the space of 2 weeks here at Paraparaumu Beach. He won the very last Caltex tournament, and then 2 weeks later we hosted the New Zealand Open, so quite a quick turnaround for those two, but he won both of them here. He's still alive. He lives on the coast north of Sydney. I tried really hard to get him to interview during during COVID when I did a series of those interviews, and I even had a friend that was going to drive up from Sydney to set him up on a laptop because they didn't have email or laptop or anything like that. And I had it all set up and he was all going to do it, and then his wife, phoned me and said, hey, look, Bill's happy with what he's done in life, he's comfortable, he's a big fan of Paraparaumu Beach, wishes you all the best, but he's not a big guy for wanting to talk about his career and his achievements. And it's kind of really interesting. I mean, you got someone that was so successful, he's and I don't know if it's a formal record, but he's got a huge amount of course records throughout Australasia, potentially the world, but there's no interest in kind of sharing those kind of stories. So anyway, Billy Duncan, and I noticed somewhere he actually came back and played a skins tournament around our 50th, yeah. You probably met him, Brian. Corey Paven, 1984. I'm looking at my brother here because both him and my other brother wouldn't let me come to this one. This was kind of coming into my early days, and it was the Broadbank, I think the Broadbank New Zealand Open. Corey Paven won that. He also won the 95 US Open. I was probably a pain. I would have been about 11 years old at that stage, so I didn't get to come to that one. But I did get to come to this one, 1988, and this was during a really, wonderful period for the club where we held the Opens 7 or 8 times over a 15 year kind of period. My memory of that last day, and it's borne out by some stories I've heard since, it was incredibly windy. Ian Stanley had a reasonably comfortable lead, but it's amazing what pressure can do. And again, my distinct memory is watching him behind the 17th green. I think he might have had a 2 or 3 shot victory, and he went over the 17th green, which, as you know, that's not really a place you want to go. And all of a sudden, you could see the pressure build. I think he might have bogeyed 16, but anyway, he was facing a bogey on 17, and there was a line of television cables. In those days, it was cables stretched all over the course, and they'd have a college kid kind of, pulling them around and things like that. Anyway, there was one that was inhibiting his ball, and the poor college kid was, trying to wheel it in as fast as he could, and he turned around and he said, can't you do it faster, you little dickhead? And I just remember thinking, wow, the college kid went bright red, and I thought, wow, how unnecessary that was. It was kind of pretty embarrassing. But again, it's interesting what pressure will do. I think he got up, down, he won by 2 shots, but that always kind of sits uncomfortably with me. And just to talk about the wind, Mike Clayton, who's a big fan of Paraparaumu Beach, he credits his 64 that day as the best round of golf he's ever played. Not his lowest round, but his best round. He was sitting in the clubhouse, having shot 64, clubhouse leader. But he said, Leo, to put it into context, he said he hit a 4 iron into the 16th green. So that's how windy it was. And he said he hit a lot of 3 and 4 irons all day that day. Greg Turner, 1989, wonderful sunny day. I do remember this one as well. And the real defining moment of that Open was, sadly in many ways, great for Greg, but Frank Nobilo on the 5th, where he went side to side. I've heard some people say he had a 7, he had an 8, he had a 6, which in professional golf is pretty catastrophic. So when interviewing Greg Turner on this moment, he said he came off the 7th, he had just birdied it, and he said all of a sudden he was surrounded by a massive crowd that had all flowed from 5, where Nobilo had just tripled into him, and he said he didn't know what was going on until he got to the 8th green. He looked up and he was leading the New Zealand Open and never looked back, won that in 1989. Roger Davis, a really good supporter of New Zealand golf, very successful throughout his career in Europe and Australasia. He won in 92, was it? 91? 91. 91, because of course 92 was Grant Waite. And Grant Waite, I mean, everyone knows we walk past the plaque every time we play, but he's the guy that struck the 2 iron on the Friday and holed it out for an Albatross 2. Again, in that hard luck story for Nobilo again, he was, no, that comes in the next year, sorry, against Peter Fowler, I think it was. He was leading by 2, and he finished 2 bogeys and a par, I think. He's 16, the ball came back to his feet. Anyway, Peter Fowler won that one, and another one escaped Frank Nobilo, wonderful player, and probably deserved the New Zealand Open. Peter Fowler has a distinction, he's a dual citizen. He lives in Auckland. He's won the Australian Open and he's also won the New Zealand Open. And he's, yeah, like I say, he's a dual citizen, naturalised Kiwi. Michael Long, 1996. And this kick-started a really incredibly strong run of performances for Michael Long on the Australasian Tour, with some victories and some top finishes, and eventually it actually got him a place on the PGA Tour. So fantastic memories there in '96. Sometimes people ask me, what's the best golf you've ever seen live? And it was this day, it was Michael Campbell, and as we all know, his career was accentuated by massive highs and sadly some really low lows. But when he was on, he was just incredible to watch, and he was certainly on that day in 2000. He birdied 5 out of the last 7 holes. Now, when I interviewed him, I was really, really excited about this moment in the interview, and I'd set him up beforehand. I said, hey, Michael, when I get to the 2000 Open, I'm just going to lead you in, but please just don't rush. I want to step through a few kind of shots and memories and things like that. So, yeah, Leo said, oh, it was a long time ago. We're going to say you birdie 12 and then you hit it on 13 and 2 and you sink a putt right up the middle. And I remember looking at it, it was like a, I don't know, like a 10 or 12 metre type putt. And he looks at me and he goes, did I? I'm like, at this stage I thought Michael was going to take the story over, but anyway, he didn't. So, okay, so Michael, then you par 14 and then 15, you come from the left rough onto the green, again, long putt right up the middle of the green, and you bin that one as well. Really? Oh, holy hell. So this is, just wonderful memories for me, and this guy can't even remember it. And then we go forward and, 18, you birdied it to make a playoff. And he goes, was there a playoff? Anyway, there was a playoff. So he birdied 5 of the last 7. He was a playoff. Craig Perks, who was kind of unknown, or certainly unknown to me, but probably unknown to most. He'd done most of his stuff was over in the US, and he'd come back here to Paraparaumu Beach, and he was leading right up until, the last hole, I guess. And they went to a playoff. They both birdied the first playoff hole, and then Campbell eagled the second playoff hole to win the Brodie Breeze Trophy. So, obviously Michael's done some great things, including a US Open. So, nice to have his history associated with our history. And that was that day. That's that day in 2000. So look at the crowds and look at the hospitality. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in here that, whether they were there that day or had attended Opens during that period, that it really kind of buzzed here. And, no time to get political, but I really wish the New Zealand Open would move around again so that whether you're watching the Caltex or whether, you were me as a teenager watching, Campbell win, that you could be inspired and you could see that stuff up close in your town on your golf course. In 2002 was our last Open, so coming up 22 years ago, and Campbell could have actually gone, could have got 2 of them, but he 3-putted from a very short distance on 17, and Craig Parry held firm and won the New Zealand Open. And Craig Parry always says that he owes the New Zealand Open, or the New Zealand Open was worth something like $5 million to him, because from there it got him into an end-of-year world golf event, and he won that, and then that got him into the Ford Open, and he won that, and all of a sudden he had a renaissance at the back end of his career. So he's got a lot of time for New Zealand, Paraparaumu and the New Zealand Open. But of course it was infamous, the 2002 Open, or famous for the presence of the world's #1 golfer, Tiger Woods. And of course it would be remiss to not mention Steve Williams as well, who was instrumental obviously in bringing Tiger here, but just a huge identity in the game. And I don't know if you're into podcasts, but he's got a really excellent podcast out at the moment with Dominic Harvey, I think it is. And he talks very fondly of his early years here, and I know they're well documented, but as a youngster he started caddying, I think even from 7 or 8. His father had arranged a caddy job for him with Peter Thompson out at Heratonga at the New Zealand Open. But he talks about his passion. He could play the game, but his passion for caddying. And he'd start out with $1, and then he was obviously adding some real value to the people that he was caddying for, and then they'd be bidding for him at $2 and $3. So from there, and again talking to Steve, just how professional he was at even a young age. And I've met one of his first bags, Mighty Mouse, Eric Fraser. And Eric, little wee Eric, he used to shuffle in here for a half shandy on a Friday. He'd say, Leo, he said, he might have only been 12 years old, but he said, if he told you to hit a 7-iron, you dared not argue with him, you hit that 7-iron. So Steve, wonderful ambassador for the club, and has gone on and done incredible things. Obviously, winning the majors. He has a number of them with Tiger, but then with Adam Scott towards the end as well. But so Tiger Woods, and Steve says in this podcast that his arrangement when he signs up these deals is that if they are to win a major, he expects them to kind of come down to New Zealand. I guess we can still wait for Adam Scott to fulfil that, But it was yourself, Alan, and Owen Williams, John Freer, and Alan Mackay, the +4 syndicate, who had this vision to bring the world's #1 golfer out to New Zealand. And obviously Alan had a good connection with Steve. Steve probably spending more time in the butcher's shop, from what I understand, than he did at school. And went over there to Pebble Beach and presented Tiger with an All Black jersey and secured, I guess, the conditional appearance of Tiger Woods out here at Paraparaumu Beach. And I think even Steve Williams says that he kind of laments the fact that they weren't able to kind of stitch the TV and probably the finance side of it together, and FR Partners took control of things, kind of non-golfers, and really kind of lost what I think, Steve and Alan and your group kind of, you probably visioned for what you were hoping would come out of that New Zealand Open. But a wonderful occasion for the golf club, and it was a very challenging backdrop. You had 9/11 that happened just before that. You had terrible weather on the day. Ticket prices were quite contentious. But there was a and Tiger, I guess, didn't play that well. So. Or not as well as he kind of could have. He played really well in certain periods and not so much in the other. But it's interesting. People kind of think that the golf club was somehow connected with the. I mean, it was successful, but it could have been way more successful, I guess. But the golf club. The golf club got new locker rooms. The golf club got a whole lot of capital works done. Our green fees spiked. Our membership spiked. Our profile. We've still got people that come in today that come and play our place because this is where Tiger Woods played, and this is where Steve Williams is caddy. So there was actually a lot of positives that kind of come out of the back of that for the golf club. I mean, you look at that. That's the big British Open stand down the side there, and the hospitality. It was a huge event to put on. So it just shows what is possible. But sadly, out of the back of this came some real negative stuff for the golf club, and I think it's worth addressing it because it's fair to say it was a bit of a low point in our history, and it's sad that it kind of got tied into that Tiger Woods thing, as if it was the golf club that spent $2 million bringing Tiger to New Zealand, which they didn't, but it just coincided with the club, I guess, extending itself in some areas with some over-capitalisation on the building extensions and things like that, and just spending a little bit much each year, more than they were making, and it just kind of snowballed, and pretty soon our debt was up over $1 million. And it's interesting. It's just those types of things. And I think you had a special general meeting here, and someone leaked it to the media, and I think it was Peter Williams or Brendan Telfer or someone put it on the news, and next thing was Paraparaumu Beach is in trouble and financial ruin, and that kind of stuck with us for a hell of a long time. In some cases, it kind of still does. There's still people that think that somehow that was connected to the Tiger Woods situation. But look, there was some restructuring going on. There was some refinancing going on. We were very fortunate that we had the support of a very small number of members that put in interest-free loans. The club overall did a sacrifice of paying for 12 months, but playing for 8 months. And just very slowly, we've managed to kind of creep it out slowly until, in the last 6 months, we're not far off being kind of debt-free and in a totally different growth situation as opposed to an austere situation. So I just thought that was worth mentioning. I just want to flick through quickly some of the people associated with the club. I'm just going to go through the professionals here. So the professionals were kind of contracted out for a reasonable period of time. This is Reg Butters. Reg, like I was saying, earlier, he was one of those early professionals that came out from Dornoch in the north of Scotland. He arrived in New Zealand in 1906. He was one of the 12 original professionals that formed the New Zealand PGA, and he retired as a pro at the Miramar Golf Club in 1945. But Douglas White brought him out of retirement, and he worked at Paraparaumu Beach Golf Club until 76 years of age, so quite an age. He was replaced by Alf Jenkins, and Alf was then followed by his son Ralph. Jim Moore, no, not Jim Morgan. Then we had Jeff Donald, I think they called him the Duck. Jim Morgan, but before we got to Kurt, we had Glenn Morrison, 1980 to 1986. And then Kurt Michelson. And Kurt Michelson, only 21 years of age. He grew up on the side of the 11th green. He's still to this day incredibly passionate about Paraparaumu Beach, learnt to play here, turned professional, and I believe through Kurt that Ido DiBernardo was instrumental in getting Kurt his start here as the professional, and for them to take a punt on a 21-year-old. Incredibly smart guy, Kurt, very high, intelligent person. Took it over, like I say, at the age of 21. So he did that so he would have done that right throughout those glory years of the New Zealand Open. And then he headed off overseas, and he got into the golf course management side of things. So he transferred his professional skills into the management side of things. And at one stage, I think he headed up Troon Golf for Asia and Australasia, which was quite a reasonable position with a number of the management of a number of golf courses under his belt. He's now in Indonesia, doing very well over there, managing a golf club. Alan Mackay, so like I say, part of that +4 group. He was here from 94 to 2003, went to Queenstown, Millbrook, the Hills, and now he's quite involved with Hamish Edwards there and trying to get this golf course at Ohau over the line. And to finish off that, we had Alan Curry, Neil Munro, and then in 2010 the club took over the operation with an in-house arrangement with Golf Services Manager. And we had Dax Menton, Ricky Scammell, and since 2007 we've had Glenn Robinson, a PGA professional. Secretary managers. Alex Patterson, so Stronach's son, he was our first secretary manager. And you can kind of see through here, these are very short-term appointments. 2-3 years seem to be the consistent theme. Harry Turner, Walter Whitewick, and then Gordon Pettigrew, who he was here for 14 years, and he was the longest serving up until just recently. Following that was John Rennie, Peter Dixon, Cyril Bagent, Mrs. Glen Mitchell, our first female general manager, secretary manager, Mrs. Pat Taylor, who is still prominent in the community, good golfer. She plays bowls now, I think, doesn't she? Yeah, you'll see her at different events that we hold. No doubt we'll see her at some stage this year. Wyn Ingram, who I think he came out of the government department. Mike Piper, Dermot Whelan, 2003 to 2006. Dermot came to us from the Renoff Tennis Centre. Unfortunately, Dermot passed away from cancer very short time ago. David Lawrenson was an acting, so that was during that kind of restructure period, 06 to 08. And then obviously I took on the dual role from 08. Now it's interesting, some people talk about tenure in a negative way. Oh, the guy's been here too long. But I think when it comes to greenkeeping, I don't think that's a bad thing. And Paraparaumu Beach has only been served by 4 greenkeepers. And you know, if you think Royal Melbourne's had 5 greenkeepers, so they've had relatively long tenure from the greenkeepers they've had. And I think the positive out of that is that, you know, the less pair of hands it gets handed through. You know, less different ideas, and I guess a greater consistency in the preparation and retention of your course. So this was Jack Hunt. I got this photo off I made a comment on a Facebook group, or someone made a comment to me. Anyway, his stepdaughter reached out to me, and she just said what a generous man Jack Hunt was. Had taken her mother and her in and treated her like a daughter. Said he was a man that loved the water, loved family, and she sent this photo to me, that's one of the few photos I have of Jack Hunt. He was here for 1949 to 65, and that doesn't, of course, take in the years that he was here back in the 9-hole days.
He fell back in favour.
Yes, so he did fall back in favour. So once they'd the other 2 exited the syndicate, he'd fallen out of one of those guys. So once Doug White took it on, Doug White brought Jack Hunt back. Yeah, and then did the construction and was there for another 15, 16 years. I don't have a photo, but Terry Tinsley took over from Jack Hunt. I understand it was a promotion from within the ranks. I don't know a lot about Terry Tinsley, but he was only here for 5 or 6 years. And then Brian Hinton. Brian Hinton was here for 35 years. Yeah, a long, long time. You know, incredibly protective of the golf course, and you know, it sounds like it was quite difficult towards the end, but you know, I think it's sad that some people are judging things on how things finished, not necessarily how they started. And you think over 35 years, and I've read just so many glowing things and passionate things about, you know, about Brian Hinton, and I believe that the course is largely untouched, you know, through his dogged determination. All right, there goes a young photo, and then Leo Barber, the fourth superintendent. This is Doug White's cabinet, so just a little bit about the governance of the club. I understand Doug White used to convene his cabinet over here. They used to drink whiskey and all sorts of spirits, and you can see the caricatures in the back, and I also understand that you were invited to that table. You didn't just kind of rock up and join that table. So there'll be a bunch of powerful people in that club. They talk about Doug White being the benevolent dictator. Obviously a very successful man in business as well. He was the chairman of Golden Bay Cement and also the BNZ. So you think they're two very big roles. Good golfer, club champion in 1951. He was a captain, the non-playing captain of the 1960 Eisenhower team. And he was president of this club for 26 years. All right, so ruled it pretty strong during those early informative years. He was awarded a CBE in 1962 for services to sport and business. His wife, Jubilee, was also prominent in the club in the women's section. She was president of that section for 16 years. In 1978, the first female was elected to the General Committee. That was Mrs. Doris Hamilton Roberts. She was also a delegate and president at provincial level. Then in the late 90s, the constitution was changed. The club moved from a committee structure to a board structure, which is seen to be more business and strategy focus. And as a result, the committee shrunk somewhat, with just 4 elected representatives and a president and 2 club captains that could attend meetings, but sadly had no voting rights. This changed 10 or so years later to rightly give the president and both captains voting rights, and the name was changed from the Board of Management to the Management Committee. And I'll just duck through quickly on some of the golfing committees, because whilst we're a club, there's a whole lot of subsections of that club as well. The Paraparaumu Beach Ladies Golf Club, that was formed in 1949 and had its own constitution. The main club rules were altered to allow for the election of a women's captain, a secretary and committee. In 1950 there were 23 active females. Now the first reference to midweek women's competitions was in 1952, and in 1953 there was a subcommittee set up to run these competitions. By 1965 there was a request to the main committee to split the midweek and the weekends women clubs, split into finances and separate affiliations to LGU. There we go, I did promise you that, Mary McCulloch. The women are incredibly active, running their own golf programs, open days and interclub. I thought it was worth mentioning or singling out these 3 ladies, and apologies for singling people out like this, but I thought it was worth doing it. They're 3 of our life members. You got Barbara Gill there, aptly with the knife in her hand. No, she was a neighbour of mine, lovely lady. Barbara Gill, Ria Erskine. Ria was our first female Māori member when she joined the club in 1973. And Jenny Mackay, who was she had a couple of different stints at being women's club captain. And this was the occasion of our 70th, our midweek lunch on the 70th anniversary. Wednesday golf has been very active here at the club as well. Wednesday men's golf. This is George Mott and Ruby Mott, who were instrumental in setting the Wednesday golf up. Kind of interesting looking into why certain things are on certain days and why our club day is on Sunday and why the midweek thing was on a Wednesday. Well, Paraparaumu, I understand, was very early adopters of weekend shopping, particularly Saturday shopping. So there was a lot of members that would have been working in their businesses on Saturday, hence the club day being on Sunday. And then a lot of those shops would close on a Wednesday afternoon, and they would take opportunity of that early closure to come across and play their golf. In 2015, the Wednesday men celebrated 50 years of Wednesday golf, and this is Harry Keane. Harry Keane was a wonderful man. He was a life member at the Wainui Golf Club, and the Paraparaumu Beach Golf Club. He was a builder by trade, very practical man, put massive voluntary hours into this place. He was a heck of a golfer. I remember early on when I got here, he would have been 85 and he shot 73, something like that. He was that kind of guy. Like if he didn't break his age when he went out, he got very despondent, and which he did towards the end of his years when he passed away at 99. And I remember at 97 he came in, and I get to probably one of the most perversely enjoyable things in my job is I get to have these wonderful special moments with these members. He came in with a beautifully handwritten resignation letter. He was a volunteer. He used to do all manner of things, but he certainly divoted the third and fourth fairway, regardless of weather. And he came in and he said, "Leo," I said, "I'm so sorry, I've got to hand my resignation letter in." He passes it across to me. "Oh my goodness, Harry, what's wrong?" He says, "I don't know what's wrong with me, Leo." He said, "I just got no energy." I said, "Harry, you're 97 years of age. Stand down, son. You've given great service." But you could just see again what volunteering meant to him and what this club had meant to him. And, you know, these are sometimes very emotional moments, whether it's giving up volunteering or actually, sadly, giving up playing. So, a wonderful man, Harry King. Nine-hole golf was introduced, I think, in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. It was seen as a way of introducing more women into the game, or those that were time poor. Slowly it's been accepted as a legitimate form of golf. In the last 10 years, the 9-hole category has seen an increase, this is at our club anyway, an increase in course access, inclusion in club events and full voting rights. And it's seen an incredible growth. And for some it's a pathway to 18-hole golf, but in others, actually, they're just quite happy playing 9-hole golf and love everything that goes with that. So we have a very strong 9-hole section here at the club. I thought I'd include this. So the Nomads, I'm not sure, the Nomads come here the first week after Easter every year. They've been coming here since 1932, so even back when it was the rudimentary golf course. They would stay in barnacles back in the day, have all sorts of fun and games and social activity afterwards and after their golf had finished. Predominantly kind of Rangatiki graziers, I understand. A lot of them had gone to the kind of the Wanganui collegiate schools. Wonderful camaraderie, and it's still in existence today. So that would be, 90 some years later. Got the wonderful trophy cabinet out there that Mary Wilson's done a great job of kind of cataloguing, and it's really worth having a look through there at some of the names and things like that. I just brought a couple of trophies along here at the moment. That's the Beauchamp Cup, so that's goes to the top qualifier for the men. This was given, I think, by the Canadians on the Ladies Golf Championship in 1990. Where there's a one here with a 9-hole. So everyone that got a 9-hole, they actually went on to a trophy. That's absolute chock full of names. I see John Pike's on there. But have a look at that later. You'll recognise a lot of names. That dates a long, long way back. This was given by the PGA, the Professional Golfers Association, in recognition and thanks for hosting the Caltex for all those years. And this last one was, so this is the Aaron Strong Cup, and that was, I think, for the foundation of the Ladies Golf Club. So have a look out there, some wonderful trophies. Sir Thomas Galt, his mum was the original caterer here at the golf club. Sir Thomas learned to play his golf here with borrowed clubs, became quite accomplished. He was a university golf champion for New Zealand. He sat on the Supreme Court. He was very highly regarded in legal circles. He was an RNA member. He served on the New Zealand Golf Council, and he was New Zealand and obviously Paraparaumu Beach's first captain of the RNA. Did a stint up there in St Andrews, and he actually ended up, his successor passed away in office, and Sir Thomas went back and helped out with the second term, or the remainder of the second term. So just touch on course records here, and some of it we've got captured there now, and this is, whilst I say the history it's quite important that you capture these things at the time because they are very easily lost. So these are course records. The first one that I can find is Peter Thompson, so that would be in that invitational game. He shot a 68 in that exhibition match. In the next one, there was a guy called Sid Cowling, and these are just my notes, and I might have written this down 10 or 15 years ago. I kind of like writing file notes and putting them in the history folder I've got here. He loved punting and raising trotters. So, and surprise, surprise, he was a club pro at various New South Wales golf courses. That's Gary Player, obviously, that I spoke about. You know, this is a great golf club. Shot 66. He shot 66, finishing 3-3. Kel Nagel matched that in 1963, shooting 66 as well. What was that? It was a 7 under, so the 4th and the 13th were actually playing as par 5s at the time. And that was the first round of the Caltex. Actually, I think you discovered this one, Glenn, that was sitting on the walls in front of us in one of those Caltex pictures. Cedric Ham. He was a...
We saw the round.
You saw there you go, okay, right. So yeah, Glenn saw that round. 24-year-old South African that came here to play the Caltex. He shot a 64.
He was playing with Peter Thompson, and he had a huge crowd following Peter Thompson.
Right, is that right? So did it.
Again, broke the course record.
So did it under pressure. Of course, Bob Charles shot 62. That was in 1968. Morris Bembridge. So that's not been beaten. Right, so since 1968, that has not been beaten. Morris Bembridge, he shot 62 as well, and myself and Glenn got to meet Morris when he came out from the UK 5 odd years ago. Went out for dinner with him. He obviously had a penchant for shooting low. When Rory McIlroy a couple of years ago chipped in from the bunker in the last round at Augusta, Morris's name came up. He had equalled Morris Bembridge's lowest 4th round at the Masters, so still holds that today now with Rory. Brad Isle shot 62 in the first round of the 2000 New Zealand Open, and Kerry Mountcastle we've placed on the wall over there as well, although he's got an asterisk. He shot a 62, there was placing during the 3rd round of the 2018 stroke play. Now on the women's side, again, hard to find, and if anyone can help me later if I've missed some gaps, I'd appreciate that, because the first one I have recorded is Philippa Dudding in 1974. She shot a 75 from the forward tees. In 1984, Janice Arnold shot a 70 from the forward tees. Then 1990, our Lisa, pictured up there, Lisa Aldridge at the time, now Lisa Herbert. She shot a 69. Julian Alvarez in 2015 stroke play, she shot a 67. We have that one on the wall over there. And that is off the blue tee, what we play as the blue tees today. And then just a couple of weeks ago, Marina Ito in our Pro-Am, she shot a 64. And that's a combination. That's a course that was called our Charles Tour course, and that's 15% shorter than our black tee course. That's the professionals and amateurs, and there's some quick ones here. Gene Roberts, I think he was a South African. I think he was playing here at a schoolboys event. He shot 65. Alec Prentice, of course, shot 65 when he was winning our Pro-Am. His dad reminds me he shot 61 off our blue tees a year or two ago as well, so incredible score. I've mentioned Kerry. Martin Webber, I think your brother reckons that you shot 65 on one occasion. John Durry shot 63. It's got brackets here, placing. And that just segues me on to John Durry. Fantastic man. He's out in the foyer there. I got to meet him very briefly. I started in 2006. He passed away in May 2006. And he's possibly one of our most successful male golfers. He was a 9-time club champion. He won 3 other club championships. He won 2 at Shandon and 1 at Wellington Golf Club. He was a 2-time North Island champion. He was a New Zealand foursomes champion 5 times. He won the Bledisloe Cup twice, which is a cup for the leading amateur at the New Zealand Open. He won 4 New Zealand amateurs, which is a staggering feat, including the one here, his last one in 1979. He represented New Zealand 8 times, including 4 Eisenhowers. So a really impressive record by John Durry. So Lisa Herbert, or Lisa Aldridge for a big chunk of her playing days early on, possibly our most successful female golfer. She won 3 club championships. She represented New Zealand on 5 occasions, including 2 Espirito Santos, and one of those they came 3rd in 1992. She won 2 Queen's Surrogate Cups, including the 99 one here that was held here at Paraparaumu Beach, where she birdied the first playoff hole. So is known to perform under pressure. She was a New Zealand foursomes champion. She was a New Zealand amateur champion. She was the world, this will excite you, Graham, she was the world female left-handed champion twice. And of course, just recently when we had the Interprovincials here at the end of last year, she was the captain of the Manawatu Wanganui team. The first time that they won the Interprovincials in a long, long time. And I think she had won a playoff to get in the semi-final to get them into the final. So wonderful achievement here with Lisa, and we're going to see her. Well, we see her often anyway, but we'll see her throughout the year. With these, and it wouldn't be a presentation if we didn't talk about Lance Phelps. God, an absolute character, and I'm sure everyone, or a lot of people would have heard different stories about Lance Phelps. He was an absolute icon here at the club. Won 12 club championships, and I think he won 13 over at Martinborough, so kind of 25 between him. Very, very gifted, very talented. He's also a very good tennis player. Like I say, I think everyone will have a Lance story, or many people have a Lance story. I'll just tell you one very quickly. I think he was playing a Duncan Cup match, and he had a putt of less than a couple of feet and he had a couple of putts to win. And he putted up to kind of 2 feet, and he turned around to his opponent and he said, "Is that good?" The guy says, "No, it's not." So he hits it kind of 10 metres that way, walks after it briskly, turns around, hits it 10 metres 2 foot back, which I know I've gone between metric and imperial, and sticks it in the hole. Turns around, the guy says, "Is that good?" That was the kind of guy he was. He just did freakish things, amazing with card tricks, reciting the phone book. All sorts of kind of shenanigans. Absolute character, and I hope that we're going to see him again at this stage. He lives over in Martinborough now and drives the crayfish trucks into Wellington each day. Paul Davenport, and while we've had a couple of, or more than a couple of members turn professional, you'd probably say Paul is our only true touring professional. He played on the Australasian Tour. He was a regular on the Australasian Tour and on the Canadian Tour, where he won 4 times. Incredibly gifted, and just in interviewing him during COVID there and talking to people around him, you just see the level of practice. Yes, you've got to have skill, and it sounds like he had a lot of it, but he lived on the 13th fairway, and he used to have a regular little trip. He'd walk out from his house onto the top, play into 13, 14, he'd have a regular little kind of loop, and he'd often park up on 14 fairway, and it was a prodigious practicer. He represented New Zealand in the 1996 Dunhill Cup, and listen to this record. It's no surprise. But look at what you look at this talent, or listen to this talent. He had 15 holes in one, 4 albatrosses. He's shot a 59, and his record is 7 birdies in a row. I mean, that is pure talent right there. And I've got to know Paul mainly electronically. I did play with him in a pro-am here a number of years ago. And if you Google search him, he actually comes up. He's got his own Wikipedia page, mainly because he was he's a magician. He can do card tricks. Well, he can do all sorts of tricks, disappearing tricks. Don't give him $50 because it comes back as 5. So he's incredibly gifted in that way. And evidently he was a great pro-am partner. He certainly was to us. We had an incredibly fun day, and he did amazingly on the Australasian Tour. I was actually living in Australia at the time. I remember in the 95 Australian Open at Kingston Heath, he was leading that event at one stage. I've heard another story where he was so nervous teeing it up that he couldn't get the ball to sit on the tee, and so he just had to drive her off the deck on the first hole. And Mary, you might know this, but I mean, he was brilliant on the piano as well, wasn't he? The old piano, he'd come out and play piano for everyone. So. That's Paul Davenport, and look, I'll just go very quickly through that because we have had a lot of good members. John Hornibrook he wasn't homegrown here, but John Hornibrook was a great golfer. Ian Ewan I've spoke about. Bob Gladding was a member here at one stage when he lived in Wellington. He was a dual New Zealand Open champion. Miss Alison Miles, she represented Manawatu and Wellington. She won 6 club championships with us. Peter Crichton, he won the Fiji Open as an amateur in 1979, and he was the first amateur to win a national open since Sir Bob in 1954. Steve Barron, and Steve Williams says he's possibly the most gifted player, genuinely gifted player to come out, naturally gifted. And he thinks that he was, because I kind of said, do you think Lance Phelps would have ever, kind of made it as a professional? And he said, Lance just loved the game too much. But he said, Steve Barron, he could really play. And he thought that if they could have, got him put some support around him, got him onto the international scene, that he might have gone quite well. He lost in the final of the 1975 New Zealand Amateur as a 15-year-old to Stuart Rees. And I met Stuart Rees just recently through Pete. And it looks like Stuart Rees is hopefully going to join here as a member very soon. And he was also a New Zealand junior rep in 1978, so it just shows, you know, the national quality of the guy. Barbara Gill, 5-time club champion. She also represented Wellington. Sean Richards was 8-time club champion, won many regional tournaments, and along with Sean Kells, they won the New Zealand foursomes champs. James Betts won the 2008 New Zealand stroke play here. Martin Webber, New Zealand junior representative, and also a senior he represented the seniors in later years. Martin also turned pro, played in the New Zealand Opens and Caltexes, and he won several senior pro-ams over in Australia. Wonderful effort there. I think he is here tonight as well, Martin. Frank Boren, club champion, represented New Zealand at seniors level. He played Duncan Cup for over 50 years. Incredible achievement. And this wasn't too long ago, Franco. You were the oldest Wellington amateur champion in over 100 years. So an incredible achievement there. And finally, Emma Shipham was Emma Hayward. Now Emma Shipham, she's a sixth club champion. And along with her sister Glennie, also represented Wellington. All right, that's the people. We're just into some structural stuff now, and I'm conscious of time, so if everyone's kind of still okay, I'll just flick through some of these. But I thought it might just be interesting to look at the clubhouse. I mean, we've had some things done in here recently, and which has engendered a fair bit of pride. But, you know, let's go back to the original clubhouse in 1950. I think there was a couple of army huts, Brian, that were kind of put together, and some different iterations and add-ons and things like that. Now this is a photo off the TV. This is the Shell Wonderful World of Golf, and it's not clear, but I just wanted to show you, you know, kind of I don't know, look quite grand, I feel, and I love that kind of patina, that kind of old, that old feel about it. This is in the 1950s. You see it there, where they could still drive up the top and park their cars up the top here. In 1966, the new extensions, this is pretty close to what we've got today, where they put the locker rooms downstairs and put the peaked roofs in. This is looking from the other direction, kind of off the first tee, and you see that little building out the front. That was the administration block of the day. And that's taken out of the tower there, and that was in 2000, 2001, where the golf shop was moved off the back of the first tee there. Crib wall was put in, and it was sited where it is today. And that's what we have today, so from a couple of different angles. Just looking at the first tee and how the first tee has changed, obviously that's your first impression. David, I think that might be you sitting on the bench, David Buck, who tells me about the bench. This is 1957, so it could be David. Tells me about the bench where the caddies used to line up and wait for their bag. So you can kind of see, and I don't know, that shed, that was probably the pro shop of the day, probably where you know, Jack Hunt's wife collected the $2 to play. This is later on. This is the golf shop or the pro shop sitting around the back of the first tee. Then a new tier was put in and some hedges kind of put in there. That kind of, I think that's from like the 80s or 90s. And that's the first tee today, where we took the wall out and the golf shop's gone by that stage, and just softened some tiers. Been an incredible kind of transformation, I guess, in golf course machinery. I mean, look at what what the mowers were back in the day. Incredible. This is an old Toro mower as well. Used to cut the fairways. This is I couldn't find the exact photo of it, but we'll trail behind gangs. Very kind of rudimentary mowers. And the introduction of the lightweight fairway mower certainly made a big change, and that was kind of floating heads and an all-in-one kind of power unit with units, and could give a lot closer cut, and as a result, a lot more quality in the fairways. And that's one of the mowers we use today. That's a greens mower there. I think that's on 17 green. I mean, this stuff's not cheap. It's all imported. These mowers today, I think that one's about $65,000 worth. The fairway mowers now are up to $120,000 plus, so very, very expensive, this equipment. And how's this for a nice throwback? That's the first club ute Nowadays we have, the little utilities on the course, the workmen's, but this is, getting stacked up with turf there, ready for a little job. So, okay, just talking about just the look and feel of the course. I'm moving out onto the course now. This is a photo or an aerial from a very early stage. You can kind of see there was some vegetation out there. There were the line of trees, the macrocarpus and things that ran up the 11th and 12th. Some other little kind of pockets around the place, but still not massive. And then through the 50s and 60s, there was a proliferation of planting. And this is in a slight on the people of the day, because there's so much more education and knowledge around and reading around kind of the ecology and the specialness of indigenous flora and things like that. So you can kind of see there was willows had crept in and pines had self-seeded or had been planted, little ornamental plantings in between tees. This is the 5th hole, by the way, if anyone doesn't recognise that. So quite unrecognisable, I guess, from today. We had the plantation in the middle there. Originally this was planted as a cash crop, so to be harvested at the maturity, 28, 30 years, and for that funds to be used for machinery purchase or something similar. So it was only 1.5 hectares over there in the middle of the course, but it certainly kind of had quite a dominant impact on the look and feel of the course. That was harvested on 2 occasions, the first time in the 1990s, and then again in 2015. This is in 2015 when it was milled. I mean, you just see the slash and stuff it kind of left behind. They were trees. So like I say, it was a cash crop, but when we felled it in 2015, you're very dependent on timber prices, and also that it needed to be, looked after and all the rest of it. So I think we got, from memory, about 15 or 20,000 out of that, which is quite a small, when you look at a mower being 65,000, you're not going to buy, you probably buy the front wheels. But so there wasn't a lot in that. And in fact, we used that money to pull all the roots out of that area and to bury all the roots and to reinstate it into native grass. And you can see that's the first tee there, and you see you had all these little ornamental hedges and things like that were blocking off your vistas, and you also got the path running up the middle, which I'll talk about soon. But here goes that plantation again, so you kind of see just how imposing. It's only 1.5 hectares, but it was just such a dominant presence in the course. And look at the shadows it's throwing around the place. But as soon as that's removed, look how that's just opened the course up. So all of a sudden, we open up to the Tararuas, we open up back to Kapiti Island. We had all these wonderful sand dunes that were kind of trapped under pine trees and the like. So I just think the whole ambience and the feel of the place lifted incredibly, and probably more in keeping with that Lynx vision, of the early architect. This was a view out from our clubhouse just here now, so you can see all the trees there on the left and the right. That was in the 1980s, that was a couple of years ago. And then the unintended consequences, when we were taking down vegetation, I never thought that taking down the plantation, over in the triangle would make a material difference to the view out of the clubhouse, which was, some kind of a kilometre away. But all of a sudden it opened up those hills, up towards Te Horo and to Otaki. And similar in the other, I haven't got that, like in the other direction, I never thought that taking the trees down in front of the Thompson's house would actually make the 17th a better hole, because now you're looking all the way down to Pukera Bay. So it was quite interesting as you took trees down that you thought it might make the turf improved on the 9th. It actually made the tee shot on 17 and 18 a lot more visually aesthetic. The bunkers were originally all pot bunkers, little with sand traps. But of course, we're a very windy site, and this is in 2006, and you get a lot of wind that kind of blows through the property and spews it out, and if kind of not maintained, these bunkers get deeper, they get more difficult to get into. The sand blows out and kind of starts distorting and building up where it kind of shouldn't. But it's very difficult because of the fine sands, it's it's very difficult to do anything with those fine sands. So we settled on, and this had been happening prior to and you can see all in the British Open courses, to use the revetting technique to kind of shore up the edges, give some kind of stability, made them more playable, made them a little bit more aesthetically kind of impressive. We also looked at kind of walk-in areas and things like that. That's a second bunker there. So that's actually the second bunker as well. That was back in 2000 or late 90s. Technique had come along a fair bit, and that's no slight on other people before, because if you look at some of the machinery and the progression of machinery, this was the turf cutter back in the 90s. It was a little skid that was on a 3-point linkage, and you'd jump on to kind of provide a bit of weight to drag through to get revettes of that kind of quality. That's obviously the turf cutter we have today, which can take up a nice chunk and create quite a nice brick. And that's the resulting kind of finish. So we go through the course, we revet on a cyclic basis, generally depending on how much play they get, anywhere between 5 and 10 years, with an average being around about seven odd years. So something like the 14th bunker front left and the 18th bunker front left gets a lot of play. They might be replaced every 5 years, but one of the other bunkers that doesn't get much play, I don't know, left-hand side of 11, for example, you might do that every 10 years. What tended to happen during, when irrigation was installed, I'm going to talk about irrigation soon, but single row irrigation, so that would be put in, and it got put in here during the 1970s. Your fairway width tended to narrow up to where the water, where the fairway was getting irrigated. So as a result, a lot of the short grass kind of, turned into these very narrow fairways, and there was very much a mindset, I guess, during hosting those opens, that you've got to make narrow fairways equal harder golf, and harder golf means it's better golf. Well, that's not necessarily always the case. So we certainly looked at mowing lines and restoring a lot of that short grass, and like I say, with Ian Ewan pointing out areas that Alec Russell had identified as desired landing spots, and trying to recapture some of that short grass. So this is just before and after there. You can kind of see we're kind of scalping out, and now the fourth fairway looks completely different. Obviously we linked it up with the third fairway at the same time as well. This would be a greenkeeper's worst nightmare, but this is what I kind of walked into. This is James Newell here, my assistant at the time. We had bayonets, so we watered the fairways through bayonets, and it's interesting, been here a little while now and seen some of the people that I'm employing, and 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds. What's that thing sitting in the side of the shed? I was like, hey, that was my irrigation system when I turned up. So we used to go and plug these things in. They would stay in there during, often for days, stay in over the weekends, and we would move them around, and there'd be all sorts of local knowledge and tricks of how many you could put on any fairway at any one time, and the third fairway was linked to the 15th fairway, that was linked to the 13th fairway, that was all on one station. So anyway, you almost had to kind of, it was a tough education every time you had a new staff member come along. And then the system was really badly failing. The system that was put in 1972 was all this MDPE pipe, but it was all welded joins, and just one by one these welded joints started splitting. I mean, they would have been in the ground for 40 odd years, and they were very, very expensive fixes. And such was the system that when we had one break, even if it was on, in this case, the third fairway by the looks of it, it would take the whole system out, because there was just no isolation. You couldn't shut off the third fairway and keep everything else going. So it was really, really challenging. When summer would come, you'd be faced with this stuff on a very regular basis. So the installation of it, or the installation of a new irrigation system, was a really big thing, and for years it was just too big for the club. We were looking at $1 million installs, and that was a big number when we had $1 million debt, and so it was just always kind of pushed out. And I'll credit Paul DiBernardo with coming up with the idea of hey, well, why don't we pay for the plan, do it in-house, get a contractor, use volunteers, do it in chunks. So instead of doing 18 all at once, let's do one fairway or 3 fairways or whatever that is. And so we have systematically been going through since 2015, replenishing our irrigation, putting in new main lines, and new laterals, new pop-ups, new control system, PC-based. You see the guys pulling it up from their, turning it on from their phones now and turning it off. So an absolute kind of game changer. Still has to be used responsibly. We've got to be careful that, we don't get into an overwatering type of situation where all of a sudden we, massively change the characteristic of what our course is. But I think you certainly agree that the fairway quality has come a long way, because we're not losing grass like we kind of used to lose. And if we do, like we had a real tough time down the 12th fairway in the last kind of month, 6 weeks, but we've been able to pull it back through the use of irrigation. And it's been really interesting that what we've seen, because we've had to be, our water's been metered, not through we don't pay for it, but we still have a daily limit, is that we've actually been using less water with this new system, even though it's got more heads, because it's got better distribution. So we've been using less water, so much so that we actually gave some of our water rights back. So we did it through the use of volunteers, and me personally, I love this. It's an opportunity for the members to kind of get to know you better, and to know a little bit better understanding about what you're facing in your job, and then for us, it's an opportunity for us to get to know the members better. And I've formed some wonderful relationships just through working in a trench alongside these guys here and so forth. So we ended up doing this for $380,000, which is incredible. I mean, that would be at least double that, if not more. Irrigation systems now, the full noise would be in excess of $1 million. So it was incredible to kind of get that done. So the course largely, I've talked about some routings and things in the early days, but the course largely hasn't changed since 1949. There's only been 2 significant changes, maybe a couple more, but two significant ones. And that was the 9th hole out here. The 9th hole used to tee right up the boundary. A neighbour took the club to court in the early 1970s. And if you read the history book, it looked like the club was going quite successfully in their defence of it, and then the neighbour turned up with a suitcase full of golf balls, unzipped them and let them roll all over the courtroom floor, and they duly lost the case. So the 9th hole had to come in. We've had to put the internal out of bounds in, which has kind of changed the character. And I'm not encouraging it, but if you ever do tee off from the left-hand side of the 8th green, the teeing platforms are still there. It's got it's just got a wonderful feel to it, not having the out of bounds. And if you do push it to the right, you're in the elephant's footprint, and you're disadvantaged anyway. So it's quite a nice hole from over there. But hey, that was one that was forced on us. And so then at the same time, they decided there had been some issues down on the 14th hole with neighbours there as well, and decided to make the change with the 14th there. Again, this is a photo off the TV, so not great, but that is what our original 14th hole looked like, albeit a little bit kind of blurry. For those that aren't aware, where the arrow is where the 14th green used to be. And if you go down there, and actually when I played with Sir Bob towards the end of the last year, he pointed out where he thought the original bunker was. So there's still some kind of shapes out there. And the tee used to be kind of where the school gate is, and you used to tee up through the saddle. And again, if you ever do find yourself out on the left-hand side of 14, look up, and the tee shot up through the chute just feels so much more comfortable than what it is now, because the hole's been kind of forced over, and the tee has been created. That's the original green site there. That's the original green template. That's the 14th green getting constructed. So they're pulling some peat, I think it is, out of there. They had to clear out a peat swamp to start with. Might see it there. See, there's a little peat swamp. And you can see the digger up over in the background pulling the dune down and creating where the tee block is now on 15. And that would have been material brought in to build that green as well. So some kind of reasonably significant, would have been significant changes there at the time. And that was Sloane Morpeth, as I mentioned a long time ago, that developed that. Just prior to the 2002 Open, there was Jeff Ash got involved, and there was some kind of lengthening done. The 18th hole was actually taken across, the tee was taken across to the left-hand side of 17. This is the tee getting built there. push it back to make it 480 to 500 metres, I think it is. And then that allowed them to put a back tee in for 3, so to take the hole from 400 to about 440, 450. That was all in the same one. At the same time, because 18 had been taken across to the left, it then left a spare space at the end of the practice fairway, and they put this little chipping green in, which, surprise, surprise, was never utilised that much. So anyway, so that all reverted back in 2005. Drainage, I'm even dreading putting these next photos up, but you can't hide from it. People think that some of the flooding has just been a recent occurrence. From what I can tell on the records and people I've spoken to, every kind of 14, 15 years there's been significant weather events which has impacted on the golf course. Here goes something from the late 70s, early 80s, I believe, where our 3rd and 4th fairway obviously was causing a lot of trouble back then. I think it was Dickie Warren, I think Dickie Warren was made a life member, or maybe he wasn't made a life member, but... what's that, sorry?
He was made.
He was, okay, there was some controversy about whether he should or really shouldn't, because he enjoyed peeing around the golf course or something like that. But he was he had a cartage contracting business or something, and he used to come in and dump things into areas where you needed fill and raised up the front of 13, and you'll see, if you look around close enough, you'll see like some abnormally kind of flat areas, even over the right-hand side of 15. You'll see some flat areas where we were clearly filled up. That was the flood. That was in 2015, so you can see significant rain right up our 18th there. That's the one in 2021, and there you go in 2022. That was just before the New Zealand Seniors. So a very challenging period to deal with on the golf course anyway, and obviously as golfers to play around it. This is drainage. It's an old photo from drainage down the 18th. You'll still see those drainage pits down there. There's some drainage we did in front of 18 back in 06. So there's been some drainage, a lot of soak holes around, but of course, if you get the volume that we had the last couple of years, it just overwhelms these systems. We're very low lying in relation to the sea level. Some parts are only 2 metres above sea level. The greenkeeper's shed wasn't always where it is now, to the left-hand side of 8. It was actually originally what we know as the cart shed down here in the lower car park. They sourced this shed. It was a horticultural greenhouse type shed from Raumati South, and brought it up here on a removal truck. And Harry and his mates went about fitting it out and putting lunchroom in there and toilet, showers and workshop and all the rest of it. So that was in 98. As the course got busier, it necessitated paths. Unfortunately, some of these paths are actually quite functional. How to get from A to B and just run them straight up the middle. And you've got, you've got an example here on the 2nd hole where the path effectively finished on the front of the green. So we've done a fair bit of work over the years, just trying to, we need paths out there. Obviously, we've got a lot of golf carts, we've got a lot of traffic, nearly 40,000 rounds of golf. So, but just trying to make the paths more discreet and try to hide them instead of being visually in your line, just to remove them and just tuck them under dunes and the like. So that's the 2nd hole there, just taking it down to the right. And I always tell the story, Scotty, and I think you're in the room, but I remember building this path. This was in my early days. Scotty was playing the first and voice travels, and he goes, "What the hell are they wasting their time doing this crap? They should be out cutting grass and doing something. What a waste of time." And now I think Scotty's one of the biggest proponents of moving the paths. So just shows it kind of, be patient, trust. We'll get there. And that's the 2nd hole as we know it today-ish. The 5th hole is an example I always use because it kind of encapsulates a whole bunch of different things that we've done across the golf course, and it's all kind of in a very small area. So look at the 5th hole. And the original tee actually teed off on the right-hand side, so where the kind of forward tees are, that little wee kind of funny perch up on the left-hand side of the 8th, which is the right-hand side of the 5th. They used to play from there, but when they brought in the new tee on the back tee on the 8th, it necessitated a change. Now, you can remember in some of those earlier discussions, Russell originally wanted the tee over to the left, and if you move from the current tee, anything you move to the left, the hole just looks better. It just opens up, and it's you got a bit more pop going on. But Doug White, the benevolent dictator, There we go. I've run out of my time. The benevolent dictator, early in the 50s, he just got a bulldozer and filled in a gully and created the tee as we know it today. So you can see this little circle that I've circled there. So again, modern machinery, we can do a few more things. So I thought instead of taking the tee left, to get that kind of similar pot, we can just take a little bit of the forward ground down, which we did. And you can see again, the path is running straight up the middle. You've got the willow trees and the pine trees on the right-hand side and the retaining wall and things in the background. So we've got a hydrangea and digger, and we actually took that ground down. You can see it was not insignificant. Big area opened up. Path out to the left, put some natural looking contours into the right to disguise it. And then this area, so this is one of these areas I'm talking about. And if you read in the history book, there's a couple of paragraphs in there where Bob Gladding, I think it is, really laments the left-hand side of the fifth was filled in. And the left-hand side of the fifth used to be as deep as the right-hand side of the fifth, I understand. And I managed to walk the course with Bob Gladding on one of his trips here. And they just reckon it should never have been done. So, and you can actually see where that seam is. You can kind of see how it was just filled in flat. So when I got the opportunity, we dug that all out and put some contour back in. And in doing that, we turfed it out and we made that into short grass. So, now same hole, haven't kind of changed haven't changed the design of the hole, but with the short grass, you can putt it, you can chip it, you can 7-iron it. You can choose to play the hole the way you want to play it and not have the hole tell you the way you should play it. Up until then, not up until then, but during the 90s and early 2000s, there was just one row of short grass around each green, and then you kind of went into 6-inch rough, which kind of really dulled a lot of the imagination. And so when Greg Turner did some consulting in the early 2000s, part of that was just introduce more short grass around the greens, and you can see it now. We've got all these wonderful runoffs around the place. That's in early 2000. I think that's 2003. And again, it's sometimes gets overlooked, but what's behind the green kind of has an impact on so not playing wise, but aesthetic wise. So behind this green we had a karaka tree, which is non-indigenous to the area. It's native, but it's not found on the Kapiti coast. You had a big scar of a path going up the back. You had concrete block steps, and on top you got a retaining wall for a big aircraft carrier tee on the back, and you got pine trees coming up over the back. So when we were doing, and again, unintended consequence. So we were actually redoing the sixth tee, and I never thought redoing the sixth tee would actually make the fifth hole a better hole. So we're up there trying to put that dune back in place and trying to hide the tees in behind a little bit of trickery with the shaping. And that's up on top of the sixth tee. So it was a big flat aircraft carrier. We started knocking trees down to the left. That's where the plantation is. But you can kind of see your eye just heads straight to the school. That's all you're looking at. And as we know, the sixth is one of our better holes on the golf course. It's a wonderful short par 4, but this teeing ground just made it so much less interesting from the tee. And this was a little morsel that Alec Russell left behind to us on his plan, where he kind of had a little thing there and said, drop the ridge. And it was incredible. Once we dropped the ridge, look what we uncovered. It's one of our best fairways on the whole golf course, but if you go back to that, you got no appreciation of it. So that was that. And like I say, I never thought that doing that would make the fifth hole so much better. And that's what the fifth hole looks like today. And that's the fifth hole there. So no path up the middle, no willows, and just look at the backdrop. It looks like it should always be there. 16th hole. Just put this one here quickly. So again, look at the backdrop. You're looking straight into houses. I think there was a plantation that was dropped, before things could kind of grow in and soften up. But those backdrops are very important. You also see the lack of short grass, so just one width around with the column mower. Put short grass back into there. So this was one where we kind of turfed out. Remember, it was kind of that sticky, wet ryegrass, which if you got down short, it was very daunting to get a shot back up onto the green. But again, it's just giving you options on how you want to play that hole. And that's the hole today. That's the side, short grass around the greens. And just finally, I thought I'd touch on our wetlands. We've got some wonderful wetlands out there which support all manner of invertebrate and bird life. A lot of it, a lot of it not obvious to the eye unless you're kind of around it and you kind of understand what you're kind of looking at. But they're teeming with wildlife. We've got some great ones, so it's just a matter of kind of getting the weeds out of those, and in some cases we've created some wetlands. In other cases we've just accentuated them. So it was really pleasing that. It was last year, wasn't it, that we got acknowledged for some of the efforts out there with the Environmental Award for Golf New Zealand, which was really pleasing, and I think that's something that members should be proud of, because we are you see those aerial photos, we are an area of close to natural in an increasingly urbanised environment. So it's a very special piece of property that we're custodians of. And that's kind of really it. I just wanted to finish with one quote that I thought was very apt, and it's come out of our history book, I believe, and it starts off, and this was just in reference to Alec Russell, but it's a quote from Peter Thompson, who, like I said, has been a great friend of the golf course. So he's a great friend of the golf course over many years, and highly respected. What was left after his departure was a gem of enjoyment, a monument to the game and a gift for the future. When we all turn to dust, Paraparaumu, the golf, should still be lying there, as it was when the first golfers came by, with Kapiti offshore, an island standing guard to see that no one steals it away. And the winds will forever blow to test the golfers, to give them will and give them integrity. Paraparaumu will be famed for a century yet. Thank you very much.